Everyone knows about the Roman army, the legions, the discipline, the endless conquests that carved an empire from the sands of Africa to the forests of Britain. But what about the Roman navy? The ships, the sailors, the fleets that bound those distant lands together. Rome ruled an empire that depended on the sea. Its trade, its grain, even its survival relied on the waters of the Mediterranean. Yet, when we think of Roman might, we imagine soldiers, not sailors. So did the Roman navy truly dominate the seas? Or was it more myth than mastery? As with much in Roman history, the truth is far more complex. In its earliest days, Rome had no navy at all. The first Romans were farmers and herders, not mariners. Their cities stood inland, on the banks of the Tiber, a river, not a harbor. To the north lay the Etruscans, who built great ships and traded across the Tyrrhenian Sea. To the south were the Greek colonies of Magna Graecia, Naples, Tarentum, Syracuse, cities born from the sea. Rome, meanwhile, was a landlocked republic surrounded by seafaring powers. The Romans distrusted the sea. It was unpredictable, uncontrollable, and alien to their agricultural values. For centuries, their wars were fought on land, battles of legions and spears, not sails and oars. But by the 3rd century BC, that isolation ended. Rome's expansion brought it face to face with another rising power, Carthage, a Phoenician city-state on the North African coast. Carthage was everything Rome was not: cosmopolitan, mercantile, and maritime. Its fleets of triremes and quinquiremes dominated Mediterranean trade, and its admirals ruled the waves. When Rome and Carthage clashed in 264 BC, the First Punic War became Rome's first true naval conflict. And Rome, with almost no experience at sea, had to learn fast. According to the historian Polybius, the Romans captured a wrecked Carthaginian ship and used it as a model. They copied its design plank for plank, and within 2 months built a fleet of over 100 warships. To the Carthaginians, this was laughable, but the Romans, as always, turned adaptation into art. They realized they couldn't outsail their enemies, so they turned sea battles into land battles at sea. Their secret weapon was the corvus, a wooden boarding bridge with a heavy spike on its underside. When dropped onto an enemy ship, it would bite into the deck, allowing Roman marines to storm across and fight hand to hand, their preferred style of warfare. The tactic was crude but devastating. At the Battle of Mylae in 260 BC, the consul Gaius Duilius used the corvus to board and capture dozens of Carthaginian ships. For the first time in history, Carthage had been beaten at sea. Rome's success shocked the Mediterranean. Within a decade, the Roman navy grew from nothing to a dominant force. At Ecnomus in 256 BC, one of the largest naval battles ever fought, nearly 700 ships clashed off the coast of Sicily. The Romans won again, carrying their war to North Africa. Yet for all their victories, Rome's relationship with the sea remained uneasy. Their ships were built fast, their crews were inexperienced, and their losses to storms were catastrophic. In 255 BC, a tempest destroyed nearly an entire fleet. Over 100,000 men drowned. Rome had learned to fight at sea, but not yet to live with it. Still, persistence was Rome's strength. After 23 years of brutal conflict, the First Punic War ended, with Carthage defeated and Sicily in Roman hands. From that moment, the Mediterranean would never be the same. Rome had discovered the power of the navy, but it treated it as a means to an end. never as an identity. The Roman soldier was a symbol of honor and virtue. The sailor was a laborer, a foreigner, a tool of the state. When Rome finally destroyed Carthage in 146 BC, its control of the western Mediterranean was complete, but the fleets that had won it soon dwindled. For a time, Rome faced no naval rival. The Mediterranean became what the Romans proudly called Mare Nostrum, our sea. It was less a boast about seamanship than about ownership. Rome ruled because no one else could. The navy became an instrument of logistics and policing. Ships transported legions to distant campaigns, escorted merchants, and suppressed piracy. The seas were Rome's roads, not its battlefield, but this complacency came at a price. By the 1st century BC, piracy flourished again. Bands of Cilician pirates from Asia Minor raided Roman shipping, seized towns, and even kidnapped Roman nobles. The Republic's neglect of its navy now threatened its survival. Enter Pompey the Great. In 67 BC, the Roman Senate granted him extraordinary powers to clear the Mediterranean of pirates. In just 3 months, he divided the sea into sectors, deployed squadrons, and systematically hunted the pirates down. Pompey's campaign restored Rome's naval order, but it also revealed how dependent the empire had become on strong individual leadership rather than consistent maritime tradition. During the civil wars that followed, the navy became a weapon of politics. Julius Caesar used ships to invade Britain and cross the Rubicon. His rival, Pompey, relied on naval superiority to blockade Italy. And finally, at the Battle of Actium in 31 BC, the fate of Rome itself was decided on the waves. Octavian's fleet, commanded by his admiral Agrippa, faced the combined forces of Mark Antony and Cleopatra. Agrippa used smaller, faster ships with catapults and flaming projectiles to outmaneuver Antony's massive war galleys. The result was decisive. Antony and Cleopatra fled, their fleet destroyed, and Octavian, soon to be Augustus, became Rome's first emperor. Rome had won its empire on land, but it secured it at sea. Under Augustus, the Roman navy was transformed into a permanent institution. 2 great fleets were established, the Classis Mizanensis in the west, based near Naples, and the Classis Ravanatus in the east, guarding the Adriatic and Aegean. Smaller squadrons patrolled Egypt, the Black Sea, the Danube, and the Rhine. These fleets kept the empire connected, transporting troops, guarding grain shipments, and projecting Roman power from Britain to Syria. Their crews were mostly non-citizens, drawn from coastal provinces with seafaring traditions: Greeks, Egyptians, Syrians, and Thracians. After 26 years of service, they earned Roman citizenship. The legions conquered, but the navy maintained. The ships themselves evolved from heavy quinquiremes into Liburnians, lighter, faster, and easier to maneuver. Originally used by Illyrian pirates, these ships were ideal for patrols and raids. Archaeological finds show they carried small catapults, ballistae, and even towers for archers, blending land tactics with naval ones. As always, Roman sailors operated under strict discipline, but their social status remained low. The navy had no equivalent to the heroic centurion or decorated legionary. To most Romans, glory still belonged to those who fought on land. Yet, the navy's work was essential. It ensured that the grain fleets from Egypt and North Africa, the lifeblood of Rome, reached the capital safely. It suppressed uprisings, delivered reinforcements, and kept the Mediterranean's vast network of provinces bound together. During the early empire, piracy virtually vanished. Merchants sailed freely, trade flourished, and Roman prosperity depended more on the navy than most citizens realized. For nearly 2 centuries, the Mediterranean truly became Rome's lake. But no empire stays unchallenged forever. From the 3rd century onward, Rome faced new enemies: Germanic tribes along its northern frontiers, and powerful eastern empires like the Sasanians. Internal instability weakened its fleets, and budget cuts left ships rotting in harbors. As the empire split into eastern and western halves, so too did its navy. The western fleets, based in Italy and Gaul, dwindled. The eastern fleets, centered on Constantinople, remained strong, inheriting Rome's maritime tradition. In the west, the decline was dramatic. By the 5th century, the Vandals, a Germanic people who had migrated into North Africa, built a fleet of their own. From their base in Carthage, the same city Rome had once destroyed, they launched raids across the Mediterranean. In 455 AD, Vandal ships sailed up the Tiber and sacked Rome itself. The empire that had once called the Mediterranean "our sea" could no longer defend its own capital. The irony was complete. Carthage, once Rome's greatest rival, had returned to dominate the waves. Meanwhile, in the Eastern Roman Empire, the story was different. The Byzantines inherited the Roman naval system and improved it. They developed Greek fire, a terrifying incendiary weapon that could burn even on water. For centuries it protected Constantinople and preserved the legacy of Roman maritime power long after the Western Empire fell. In many ways, the Byzantine navy was what the Roman navy might have become: professional, innovative, and genuinely naval. Yet the navy's work was essential. It ensured that the grain fleets from Egypt and North Africa, the lifeblood of Rome, reached the capital safely. It suppressed uprisings, delivered reinforcements, and kept the Mediterranean's vast network of provinces bound together. During the early empire, piracy virtually vanished. Merchants sailed freely, trade flourished, and Roman prosperity depended more on the navy than most citizens realized. For nearly 2 centuries, the Mediterranean truly became Rome's lake. So, did the Roman navy truly dominate the seas? From the Carthaginian Wars to the fall of Constantinople, Rome's maritime story spans nearly 2 millennia. From clumsy wooden corvuses to the burning brilliance of Greek fire, it's a reminder that dominance isn't always about skill. Sometimes it's about persistence. The Romans didn't invent naval warfare, but they perfected the art of turning weakness into strength. They conquered the sea the same way they conquered everything else, by refusing to accept limits. So, the next time you picture a Roman soldier, imagine also the sailor beside him, nameless, rowing under the Mediterranean sun, keeping the empire alive one oarstroke at a time. He may not have worn the armor of a legionary or carried the glory of a general, but without him, the Roman world would have collapsed long before its time. Rome's navy didn't always dominate through power. It dominated through endurance. Its triremes and transports made the Mediterranean a single, unified world. A world where Roman law, language, and culture flowed freely from shore to shore. That, more than any victory or battle, was its true triumph. So, did the Roman navy really dominate the seas? Yes, but not in the way we usually think. It wasn't the mastery of sailors, but the persistence of empire. It wasn't the romance of the sea, but the iron will of a people who refused to let it stand in their way. Rome's rule over the waves was never inevitable. It was earned, rebuilt, and re-earned countless times across centuries of storms, wars, and revolutions. And when we call the Mediterranean Mare Nostrum, our sea, perhaps we hear an echo of what made Rome great. Not perfection, but perseverance. The Romans did not conquer the sea because they loved it. They conquered it because they had to. And in doing so, they turned that necessity into destiny. For an empire born on land, their greatest achievement was to make the sea Roman, a frontier turned highway, a barrier turned bridge. In the end, Rome's power flowed not just through its legions and laws, but through its sails, its oars, and its quiet, tireless fleets. And though the empire itself is long gone, its reflection still shimmers on the waters it once ruled. Because for as long as ships cross the Mediterranean, they sail through the ghost of Rome. The empire may have fallen, but Mare Nostrum endures.